What's up? It's Matt. It's Friday, and we got to repeat. We've talked to this young lady a few times. It's not snowing in Philadelphia area where she's at now, but maybe it will tomorrow. We'll be back in a second. So, Francine, you were just giving me a geography lesson because you're in between like DC and Philadelphia and all these places. But welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. So tell everybody who you are, what you do, and then we'll get into some nitty-gritty details of the restaurant biz.
So my name is Francine Shaw. I've been in the food service industry for, oh my God, all my life. I hate to tell you at this point how many decades it's been. It's been decades. I am the CEO of TracSavvy and Savvy Food Safety, and recently partnered with a company called My Food Source.
Yep.
I think I just messed that up. They're going to kill me. But anyway, I love what I do, and I'm basically a food safety subject matter expert.
And food safety is something not for the faint of heart. It's
it's
kind of funny because one of the first times I ever was involved in like seeing the food safety side of the business, because I've been in marketing my whole life. I'm not a restaurant person. I'm literally a marketing and sales person. And I've just learned a lot about restaurant marketing from 20 years of it. But I remember I'm in Pittsburgh, and I had never seen a city where the restaurants, if you have a certain grade, or maybe everybody, you have your grade on the window. And I'm walking down South Water Street in Pittsburgh, and I go to this restaurant, I look, and it's got D+ on the window. And I recognize a D+ because I had plenty of those in school. And I look up, and I'm like, it had this, I think it even had a number, like some digit. And I'm like, look at this. And I look at what the definition of it was. And I'm like, holy shit, I'm not eating here. And I'm thinking, if the restaurant is this dirty from the health department, that probably leads to maybe some contamination in the food. I'm going to go look for somebody else.
Good idea. That's a real good idea. Yeah, I've seen some things. In fact, you just reminded me. I actually just wrote, and you don't know this, I just wrote a book, and that book talks about a whole lot of things that I saw during my time when I was doing health inspections. And some of the things that I saw, I have had, and people would be amazed about this, I have had cockroaches raining on my head, literally raining on my head. We were doing a consulting job, and my job was to get that restaurant opened back up. And they had done a mass fumigation, basically. They'd shut it down, fogged. And this place was so infested with cockroaches that they were dying. And we, couldn't wait for that full process to take place. This guy needed to get his restaurant reopened. So we're in there, and literally as the cockroaches were dying, they were falling, and we're walking across them, and they're crunching as we're walking, is because they're falling on the floor. And we have on a hooded sweatshirt over top of our suits. And they're literally raining. Another situation where I was in a town in rats. There was an empty building. The owner had been actually shut down rather quickly because the FBI had come in and taken him to prison. So when that happened,
that's a whole other problem.
All of his food and everything was left behind in the freezers and the coolers, and literally in the makeup tables, the prep tables, and everything. So the rats and the mice and everything had come in and taken over. And when they ran out of food, there was kind of like it was an old town. So underneath some of these old towns, there are underground tunnels, basically.
Yep.
They're tall enough to stand in, but there are these underground tunnels. And you can literally walk under these restaurants in these apartment buildings. So what happened is when they ran out of food, these rats were moving between the buildings from one building to another building, and they would come up into some of these facilities during the night to get something to eat. And if you're not on the same, pest management schedule, basically, they'll move from one facility to another facility to another facility, just move around the schedule, the pest management schedule, so they can find something to eat. And so what I had to do is the borough In Pennsylvania, we have boroughs,
Okay.
they're called boroughs. Um, they needed somebody to come in and basically say, hey, this is a legitimate problem. We need all these restaurants to get on the same program so that we can get rid of this infestation issue. So I had to literally go under these restaurants into these tunnels,
Oh,
rats. And it was dark. There were no lights.
yeah.
So I had on literally the highest pair of leather boots I could find, all my inspection gear, my white lab coat, my just the regular hat. You could hear these rats moving overhead, and rats can climb.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
They can climb. And you could hear I have goosebumps as I'm talking about this. You could hear them climbing, and you could hear them like scurrying about. We had flashlights, so you could see the dead rat remnants on the ground, and it was craziness. So like those are two of the experiences,
Extreme.
as an inspector, extreme experiences,
Yeah.
that I had as an inspector. Now those are extreme. Those
Yeah.
are
Well,
extreme,
it's
but
it's funny because I mean, I would imagine that the majority of restaurants are doing the majority of stuff right.
right,
But I
right.
think there's also probably a lot of education that needs to happen with regards to restaurants with the younger people in the restaurant. Because like my son worked in a restaurant last year, a pizza place. I think he's gonna be going back there soon after lacrosse is over. But I don't think he understood the importance of what he was handling, that he's helping make this pizza and there's a lot of elements to it. And it's going from that kid, from scratch to the oven to the table. And, there's a responsibility to train those kids to make sure they understand. And right now it's probably tougher than ever because everybody's short staffed and everybody's trying to hire and get people on board. What are some of the things that you recommend restaurants, take with regards to making sure people are properly educated on those elements?
Well, you're right, and I think it is a struggle right now because they don't have enough help, and it becomes a situation where they need to get these employees into the restaurants trained to do the job as quickly as they possibly can because they simply don't have enough help. And I think that the biggest mistake that people make sometimes is they train but they don't educate,
Okay.
and there's a difference between the two. So when you say to employees, hey, you have to wash your hands, they're hearing, okay, yeah, I need to wash my hands. But if they would take the time to explain to them, you need to wash your hands because if you don't wash your hands, this is what's going to happen. You need to put the food in the refrigerator in this order because if you don't put the food in the refrigerator in this order, this is what's going to happen. If the poultry doesn't go on the bottom shelf, and it drips down on the produce, you could kill somebody,
Yeah.
And employees don't. I didn't know that, at 15, 16 years old when I was working in a restaurant. Nobody ever told me that if the blood from the chicken, and I'm going to use the word blood because that's what it is, from the chicken dripped down on the lettuce, and we put that shredded lettuce on a cheeseburger and somebody ate it, it could kill them.
Yep.
I didn't know that. So did I ever put the lettuce underneath the poultry? Maybe.
Exactly.
I don't know. I might have. I was your average teenager. So that's the difference between training and educating. And I think just like, our children, a lot of times we say because I said so, or, just because this is what I told you to do, or because I'm paying you to do it. People forget the whys. And if we treat them like we want to be treated and tell them the whys of why they need to do things the way we expect them to do it, they're going to be more likely to do things properly. Does that make sense?
No, that's huge. I love what you said there because it's kind of like the old touching the hot stove as an example we've all heard a billion times, is that sometimes you don't realize not to touch the damn thing till you go, oh shit, my hand gets burned. Okay, I comprehend that. And I can relate to the story you said about washing hands at a pretty high level. I had a person recently in a different, not a restaurant, but a different business I saw come out of the restroom and not wash their hands. And I know the person and I made a comment to him, kind of joking, but also like, hey, jackass, get in there and wash your hands. And I told him a story. I said, let me tell you a story about Matt Hollenkamp's dad. He's like, who's Matt Hollenkamp? I said, Matt Hollenkamp's a kid I grew up with. His dad died. his dad died of hepatitis he got from a restaurant from a person in the restaurant not washing their hands in the kitchen. And he was like vice president of Huntington Bank in Cincinnati. It was a big deal. And I remember it being all over the news of how it traced it back to a restaurant employee not washing his hands. And I'm like, that's a pretty damn, it's like, yeah, wash your hands is the training, but why you wash your hands is because of what could happen, the chain reaction that can cause. And, I'm probably guilty of that in my business. A lot of times we tell our employees, hey, here's your job, here's your SOP. This is how you perform it. Sometimes we don't say why. In the marketing world, one the other day came up to me that a friend of mine didn't know about, was that if you shoot something that's popular, you've probably seen this on Instagram Reels, and you see where somebody shared their TikTok video on Instagram Reels. Well, Facebook's algorithm notices the TikTok logo and suppresses the video so nobody sees it. And they publish that. We don't want TikTok videos. We want organic, original content on Instagram. We don't want you sharing TikTok. And so sometimes you tell an employee, hey, make sure you post that. They post that on the platform. Don't cross share. But if you don't tell them the why, they might be like, oh, I'm in a hurry, I'll do it. But if they know that, oh shit, well, this video is going to go from getting 10,000 views to 1 view because I did it incorrectly. Like you said, it's the educate and inform versus just tell.
Well, and another thing is this, we tell people to do things that we expect them to do or want them to do, but then we don't do them ourselves. Yeah. And a lot of times restaurant owners and managers are guilty of that, as are district managers and health inspectors. So for example, and I'm big on hand washing, and so I use that as an example a lot, for the very reason that you just shared. So you'll see them disciplining or taking corrective action with employees for not washing their hands, but then they don't wash theirs. They'll go out front, they'll handle the money, they'll take the orders, and then they go back in the kitchen. But did they wash their hands before they went back in the kitchen? Did they change their gloves before they went back in the kitchen? The answer to that question is no. And I've seen health inspectors do the same thing. And there's nothing wrong with saying to them, as long as you're being polite, look, I talk to my employees about this a lot. Would you please, just so that they see you do this, set the example for them and wash your hands, because that's what we need to do. I've spoken at conferences about this. You need to set the example, and you need to lead by example, because for God's sake, if you're not doing it and the health inspector's not doing it, how can we make them believe that they need to do it?
Yeah. No, I agree completely. You got to practice what you preach. But, one thing that's unique about what you preach and what you teach people and educate people on is that, unlike me, we're marketing. Yeah. Okay. We teach you something, and you might not make a Facebook post or do an email correct or a text correct, and you don't get the reach or the engagements. You don't do food safety correct, and you got potential massive problems.
Exactly. And that can, 3,000 people a year die from foodborne illness. And like you said, I know several people because, the field that I'm in, I have friends and family that have gotten sick. I have friends who have lost people, as a result of somebody doing something wrong. It's 100% preventable. People die or get sick because somebody screwed up, not because it just naturally happens. Somebody screwed up somewhere, whether it wasn't cooked properly, it wasn't handled properly, somebody didn't wash their hands, somebody somewhere screwed up. That's why people get sick.
So let's talk about another side of this, because this happened to me recently. I went to, I won't say the restaurant because I won't put them on blast, because obviously mistakes happen. But I went to a restaurant, got to go, took it home, and my wife wanted chips and guac, and I just ordered the damn food and picked it up and went on my way. And I get home, and I know guac's not supposed to be brown, and her guac was brown, and she used to always get guac from this restaurant because I pick food up once or twice there a week. And now she's like, on queso, not guac, because that freaked her out the one time. But I mean, I don't know what bad guac does to the stomach, but to me, it's not necessarily what it may or may not do. It's the fact that person that was scooping the guac out I mean, I know it. When I looked at it, I'm like, oh shit, you got, I've never seen brown guac. The fact that somebody scooped that out shows me that somebody doesn't know that guac is not supposed to look like that. And I mean, you look at different foods, you might have, how do they recognize the chicken, the date on the chicken? You got date on the milk. I got a son that drinks milk and he'll pull out the fridge and look at it. I mean, does he check the date? So that's a whole other element of making sure the food that is out there is the right food from a standpoint of the age of it, right?
Right. And training, I work ethic is important, regardless of what we do, whether you're the mailman or you're, working in a kitchen,
Yep.
it's work ethic's important. And work ethic is something that I'm not sure we can teach.
Yeah.
Did that person not know that it wasn't good, or did they not care?
Care. Yeah.
So that that that's something that's entirely different. And those dates are important. And food cost is big to restaurants. I don't need to tell you that and labor are they're the two largest costs when you're running a restaurant. Um, so um, looking at the dates is important. Was it a date issue, or was it a time and temperature abuse?
Yeah.
Did it sit out too long, and is that why it turned brown? Um, Somebody somewhere didn't notice, didn't care. Um, did I can't tell you why that happened,
Oh
but
yeah.
training was an issue.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
Training was
It's either one of two things. They weren't trained on what the food should actually look like, because maybe they don't eat guac and don't know that guac's not brown, and at least this shade of brown. I've never seen it. Or, like you said, they weren't trained on standards that, hey, have the ability to do something. Like I had a customer of ours recently that something happened. And one of my employees said, what should I do? I said, you should refund anything that was done. And then it was some Facebook ads that shouldn't have run. I said, we'll cover the cost and then pay them back as well. I said, I want you to know you have that authorization. You don't have to ask me. It's the right thing. And so it's the same in the restaurants. You might have a 16-year-old kid who sees a boss that's kind of angry and mad and stressed and overworked and doesn't, oh man, do I throw this out? This doesn't look right or smell right, or am I going to get yelled at? But have that discipline to know what the right thing to do is.
right. And if they're handling the guac, they should know everything there is to know about that guac. Otherwise,
Yeah.
they shouldn't be touching it.
Yeah.
You know what I
Valid
mean?
point.
And
Valid point.
I'm like you. If we screw up a customer's order, I don't care what we do or mess up something. We do whatever it takes to make it right.
Yeah.
And I just feel that's how you do business, regardless of what business you're in. That's how you do business.
Yeah. And a lot of that comes from the training on the top down. I never forget, years ago, we had one of our employees that we had a $2,500 mistake on some ads online, and the employee's like, how, just take it out of my check. I'm like, I'm not taking it out of your check. I mean, that's a risk of me being in business, is that's going to happen. We'll cover it. We'll make sure the customer's happy. We'll make sure that they don't pay any money for our mistake, but that's never going to come out of your check, because at the end of the day, there's a risk I have in being in business that we're taking these efforts and we're going to screw up. It's going to happen. But I think it comes down, like you saying, education, training, but also understanding of the consequences of certain elements. Because like mine in marketing, a couple $100 Facebook ad gone wrong doesn't really crush anything. Nobody's going to die. But at the end of the day, somebody eating food that wasn't prepared correctly, or was too old, or wasn't handled correctly, that's a serious matter.
Absolutely is. And I think you just made a very valid point. I say this all the time. You have to empower your employees, regardless of what business you're in, to be able to make decisions. And they have to be able to make those decisions without fear of getting in trouble for making a mistake.
Yep.
Because otherwise they're going to be afraid to do anything, throw away the guac if it doesn't look good. So those people that are working in the industry have to be empowered to make those decisions, to throw that food away if it needs to be thrown away. to not be afraid of, creating waste when the product, if when in doubt, throw it out. You know what I mean?
When in doubt,
Regardless,
try it. Nothing.
it takes one mistake to destroy your business. You
Yep.
know, we had in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, I believe it was Lancaster, right outside Lancaster, somewhere up around Warriors Ford, actually, is where it was. My daughter lives in Warriors Ford. And I know you're familiar with that restaurant, that area.
Yep.
You have clients up in that area. Um, they had a hepatitis A outbreak at the beginning of the year, and people have died. A few people have died. That was a
Wow.
very reputable restaurant up until the beginning of this year. It was a very reputable restaurant. Um, and now it's not.
Yeah.
One mistake,
I know. Yep.
your life's business is over. Your life's
Gone.
work is done, regardless of how well your brand was doing.
Yep.
It's over.
Well, especially 2022, because if that mistake happens in 1999 when I first got into marketing, yeah, it might make the paper, it might be on the radio, it might be on TV, somebody might tell a neighbor, but now with social media and the internet, shit, everybody and their brother is gonna know.
World. It takes no time to be around it, international. It's around the world.
Yeah.
And especially if it's food related and people start dying,
Yeah.
that shit's everywhere. It's everywhere.
Speaking of how quick something spreads, you probably saw this. This isn't food safety related, but it's talking about virality. Did you see the restaurant with the cappuccino pitcher up in Bucks County, Pennsylvania, about a month ago? So there's a cappuccino pitcher floating around there. There's a joke that if you look at the picture of the cappuccino, how they do the art in it, it's a naked dude, and it's pretty apparent it's a naked guy. Well, a restaurant down the street from one of my employees in Bucks County up in Philadelphia area, they ran a print ad. I think it was in what's it called, the Clipper, or one of those magazines, and they ran an ad, a coupon ad, and that cappuccino's in there, and it went. The restaurant handled it beautifully because the restaurant got on there and said, "Hey, we obviously didn't see this," and they made jokes with it, but it got shared tens of thousands of times. And thank goodness that was just something that people could laugh off and have fun with. But like you're saying, you take that on the other side of it where it's a food issue and it's an illness and it's something like that. Those shares will shut you down really quick, not only legally, but also just from a standpoint that ain't nobody going near you with a 10-foot pole.
Right. Well, and like you said, the mistake they made, fortunately, they handled it well,
Yeah.
but that as well could have created issues
Oh, yeah. It was actually pretty funny. I'll just send it to you. You haven't seen it?
on how they handled it, So, but yes, you're absolutely right. Well, and even with foodborne illnesses, the way you handle those is detrimental.
Yeah.
Is detrimental to your survival as well.
Yeah. For sure.
How you handle the media, and the just everything from the time that it starts to be posted until you get through the process. If you get through the process, no comment is the worst thing you can say.
Oh yeah, and that's sometimes the toughest thing because it depends on what's involved. We had a couple of clients that were involved in some things that the attorneys and the insurance company, that's the only option we could say. And it was tough because I knew the truth, and the restaurant wasn't in the wrong, but it was like the insurance company's like, hey, we don't want an even bigger lawsuit. No comment. And it's like, gosh, that's brutal. But yeah, you're right. In certain situations, when you say things like that, it's like it's masking, it's hiding, and people make up their own mind.
Yeah, the best thing you can do is find a good PR.
Yeah.
And work your way through that, because no comment just makes you look guilty. But the best thing to do is not get in that position by doing everything right.
Yep.
Make sure that you're following just even the basic food safety protocols, that time and temperature, and the washing your hands, making sure that things are cleaned and sanitized. Food allergens are a big deal. Cross contact, that's a community that those people, and this is a little bit of a different topic, but they're struggling even right now to find some place to eat. And I think part of that's because of the employee shortages. People don't want to cater to that community because it's tough, and they're looking for some place to eat that will help them, find find someplace safe to purchase products, meals, menu
Yeah.
items. Just, people used to look at the bathroom and think, if the bathroom is clean, then, it's someplace that's safe to eat. Society and consumers have gone beyond that now.
Yeah.
It's no longer, I'm just going to go in and see if the bathroom's clean and, then it's going to be safe to eat here. They look further than that now, especially after COVID.
Yeah. Oh, big time, especially. Well, awesome. Well, I love our conversation. I appreciate you ending the week with a bang with me. And that's how we can find you on LinkedIn. How else can people find more about Francine?
So our website is savvyfs.com. That is savvyfranksam.com. We're on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook as well.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate your time. I hope hope we're both out of the winter weather and hope we have sunshine for the rest of the, until at least October, November, right?
I hope so. Yes. Thank
Well,
you.
thank you, man. See ya.